Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that Down the Crooked Path is researched and recorded in Niagara Falls, Ontario, on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Attawandaron, and the Mississauga of Credit First. This land has been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years, and we recognize their enduring connection. We are grateful to share these stories on their lands that carry their histories, and we encourage our listeners to reflect on the past, present, and future of the land they call home. Welcome, wanderers, to Journey Down the Crooked Path, a place where the stories are stranger, the shadows stretch longer, and the things that go bump in the night might just be listening. I'm Amanda Joy, your guide into the eerie, the forgotten, and the downright bizarre. Here, we step off the well-lit roads of Canadian creepies and venture into the murky corners of history, folklore, and the unexplained, where the whispers grow louder and the truth is never quite what it seems. So let's take a deep breath, watch your step, and whatever you do, don't look back. Once you start down the crooked path, you never know what might follow. There is this remote place in one of the most northern regions of Canada, filled with untamed wilderness, where beauty and danger walk hand in hand. For centuries, adventurers, prospectors, and travelers have ventured into the Nahanni Valley, drawn by its majestic landscapes and whispers of hidden riches. But what they found was far from fortune. It was death. Steeped in mortality, disappearances, and legends of a sinister force. The missing prospectors to headless remains, this valley's ominous reputation has earned it a chilling name: the Valley of the Headless Men. Tonight we probe into the macabre history of the Nahanni Valley, a place where nature's beauty masks a darkness that has claimed countless lives. What lies at the heart of these tragedies? Harsh terrain, human greed, or something far more inexplicable? Nestled deep within the Northwest Territories of Canada, about 500 kilometers from Yellowknife, the Nahanni Valley stands as a stark and breathtaking wilderness, its remoteness unmatched. The UNESCO World Heritage Site remains largely untouched by modern civilization. It's regulated by Parks Canada, but don't let the word park fool you. This isn't the type of place that you can just drive up to and venture into. In fact, there are no roads that lead into this park. The valley is often accessed by wealthy adventurers who enter via private float planes, which is one of the only ways to really access this park. Its rugged isolation ensures that only about 300 people visit each year, highlighting the challenging journey required to reach the sanctuary. This seclusion, coupled with its untamed beauty, makes the Nahanni Valley one of the most captivating yet mysterious landscapes on Earth. For the Dene people, this land is far more than a scenic wonder. It's an intrinsic part of their heritage and identity. The park, officially designated as Nahanni National Park Reserve, overlaps with traditional territories of several Indigenous communities. The Dene people, including those of the Deho First Nations, have thrived on this land for countless generations. The name Nahanni itself derives from the Dene and refers to the river of the land of the Naha people. Today, the Dene people continue to utilize this land and its waterways for cultural practices, resource harvesting, and ceremonial traditions. Its living landscape interwoven with their spirituality and connection to their ancestors. The Naha Valley's isolation has allowed its wildlife to flourish largely undisturbed. Its rugged land is home to majestic creatures such as mountain goats, scaling sheer cliffs, and dull sheep grazing high in the meadows. However, it's predators that leave the lasting impression. Grizzly bears roam the valley, their sheer power and presence commanding respect, while packs of timber wolves echo their howls through the deep canyons. bald eagles soar overhead, and in the water waves, beavers shape the land with their intricate dams. As Europeans arrived in the region, their interactions with this wilderness became part of Canada's history. The Hudson's Bay Company, one of the world's oldest and most storied trading enterprises, established its presence along the vast Mackenzie River network during the 18th and 19th centuries. The fur trade flourished here, with Indigenous peoples playing an integral role in trapping and trading furs that were then transported through the Mackenzie River system to market far away. The landscape became a key artery for trade, connecting the remote northern wilds to the rest of the continent. By the late 19th century, the Yukon Gold Rush was in full swing, drawing prospectors from across the globe with dreams of unimaginable wealth. The gold rush not only brought adventures, but also brought tales of peril and mystery. As some prospectors struck it rich, others disappeared into the valley or met tragic ends, leaving behind a legacy of haunting stories. The first set of miners to go missing was a group of 6 men in 1898. These men when the men didn't return, no one thought too much of it, as people often vanished into the wilderness during this time. However, a few years later, a local hunter stumbled across what seemed to be an old campsite, and with it, skeletal remains. The RCMP declared that these were the remains of the missing miners, and claimed that they most likely died due to exposure. But the truly odd thing about this scene was that the men were all missing their heads and clutching their guns. This, the RCMP claimed, was likely from animals scavenging the bodies. In the early 1900s, the McLeod brothers, Willie, Frank, and Charlie, originally from Fort Laird, were drawn to the Nahanni Valley by rumors of untold riches. Tales of gold hidden in the South Nahanni River has lured many prospectors to the region. Despite its treacherous terrain and harsh reputation, the brothers were no strangers to the wilderness and embarked on their first expedition with high hopes of striking it rich. They believed that there had to be gold found here since so few had ever been there before. Their initial ventures into the valley were exploratory. They set off with limited resources, guided only by stories of gold deposits hidden deep within the valley's waterways. While they didn't come across any gold during this first trip, they gained invaluable knowledge about the land, its harsh conditions, and challenges of navigating the South Nahanni River. On their second trip, the McLeod brothers ventured deeper into the valley. They brought with them basic mining tools and provisions, eager to uncover evidence of the valley's legendary gold veins. Making their way to Flat River, they set up camp, using their old sluice boxes panned for gold. Their persistence paid off when they reportedly found copious amounts of gold along this riverbank. However, what seemed like a successful trip soon took a turn. On their way back, they built themselves a boat, but the treacherous waters of an area known as the Cascades of the 13 Steps proved to be a formidable adversary, and there are accounts that their boat sustained damage during this expedition. It sank along with their provisions and most of the gold that they found. They were able to retrieve a rifle and slowly hike back up the river in an attempt to pan for some more gold to bring back, but they were less fortunate this time. Defeated, they returned home with a small sliver of gold. In 1905, Frank and Willie McLeod decided to mount a more ambitious expedition. After their harrowing experience, Charlie decided against going with them. His replacement was a Scottish engineer named Robert Weir. Weir was an experienced traveler and was likely drawn to the Nahanni Valley by the same allure of gold. Together, the trio ventured deep into the valley. Months went by without any communication from the group, but Charlie didn't immediately panic. Expeditions to the Nahanni Valley often took considerable time due to the vast distances, treacherous terrain, and slow pace of travel in those days. Additionally, the brothers had proven themselves capable of handling the valley's challenges in the past, and Charlie likely assumed that they were taking so long to return because they had found a large vein of gold and were gathering up as much as they could. As the months stretched into years without word from Frank or Willie, Charlie's confidence in their safety began to waver. 2 years after their departure, in 1907, Charlie could wait no longer. He organized a search party and set out for the Nahanni Valley with help from the RCMP. He ventured deeper into the valley. As he ventured deeper into the valley, he passed through towering cliffs of the first canyon, and then into the foreboding second canyon, with its imposing walls reaching skyward as if to conceal the valley's secrets. The cliff walls are home to intricate cave systems, most of which have never been explored due to the sheer height. It was here, in the shadows of the second canyon, near what is known now as Headless Creek, that Charlie came across his brother's last camp. And what he found was nothing short of horrifying. As the search party comes across the campsite, they can see a body lies just outside of the tent, and Charlie can see that this body is missing its head. The body is posed with its arm outreached, and it looks as if the person was trying to reach for a gun that lays nestled against a tree. The clothing on the body is charred, as if it's burned. Towards the back of the tent, they find that a second body lies half in and half outside of the tent, as if the person were crawling out of the tent before they died. This body, too, is missing its head. There is no third body found, nor are the heads at the campsite. Nearby, carved into a piece of wood, Charlie finds an ominous encrypted message. "We have found a fine prospect." The note hints at success in their search for gold, but it offers no clues as to what had happened that led to their demise. And like their heads, no gold was found at the camp. Charlie calls the RCMP, and they conclude that these corpses are those of his brothers, and that they likely died again from exposure, and that their heads were carried off by local wildlife. The area is searched for Robert Weir, but his body is never found. Despite what local authorities claim happened, Charlie doesn't believe it. Given the potentially missing gold and the position of the bodies, he believes that his brothers were murdered, most likely by Weir, who murdered them for gold and then fled to Vancouver. People were now scared to enter the valley. The promise of gold was no longer enough to draw people in. For several years, many prospectors avoided the valley, until Martin Jorgensen. He decided that nothing was going to stop him from getting his gold. Martin Jorgensen, a Swiss prospector, was known for his determination and resourcefulness. He had earned the nickname the Hermit of the Nahanni due to his decision to live in isolation within the valley. Unlike many others who ventured into the region for short-term expeditions, Jorgensen aimed to make the Nahanni Valley his permanent home. In 1917, Jorgensen built a small one-bedroom cabin, establishing a base for his prospecting efforts, not too far away from where the brothers' fateful final campsite had been. He was reportedly successful in finding gold, and his letters to acquaintances hinted at the promising discovery. However, his story took a dark and mysterious turn later that year. Jorgensen had planned to stay throughout the winter and then meet with his business associates in Yellowknife that summer. Jorgensen failed to meet them, and 2 months later, his associates launched a search party. They discovered his cabin burnt to the ground and his headless, lifeless body nearby. The circumstances of his death mirrored the grim fates of the McLeod brothers, and much like the brothers, no gold was found at this site either. Despite the similarities, the authorities didn't see any connection. The cause of death was undetermined, but also claimed that the heads were taken away by animals. John O'Brien's death in the Nahanni Valley is one of the most peculiar and unsettling mysteries tied to the region. O'Brien was an experienced trapper and woodsman, well-versed in the harsh conditions of Canadian wilderness. In 1921, his body was discovered in the valley under circumstances that defy explanation. O'Brien was found seated near a campsite, as though he had been enjoying its warmth. His posture was relaxed, and he held a matchbook in his hand, as if he had been about to light another fire. What made this scene so strange was it appeared that he had frozen to death, yet his body showed no signs of struggle, distress, or anything typically associated with hypothermia. Witnesses described his appearance as though he had been flash frozen, as if death had just come upon him in an instant. The campfire itself had burnt out, but its presence suggests that O'Brien had been prepared to starve off the cold. For an experienced outdoorsman like him, succumbing to the elements in such a manner seemed implausible. While authorities ultimately attributed his death to exposure, the unusual circumstances have fueled speculation and added to the Nahanni Valley's reputation of a place of unexplained phenomenon. Poole and Mary Fields, along with a group of Indigenous hunters from Fort Simpson, set out on a hunting expedition in 1926. With them is a young girl named Anne Lafferty. The group is traveling through an area known as Mary's River that flows through the Third Canyon. One day, without warning, Anne vanishes. Initially, her absence is dismissed as a minor detour, perhaps to answer nature's call. However, as hours pass and she fails to return, concern grew. Poole Fields, deeply alarmed, organizes a search party of 8 experienced hunters to help him track her down. The group, skilled in navigating the wilderness, quickly pick up her trail. Anne's shredded clothing was discovered hanging from tree branches in irregular intervals, as though she had been deliberately discarding them piece by piece. Her trail led deep into the forest, winding through dense underbrush and up into the mountains. Despite the brutal conditions, mosquitoes swarming in the summer heat and the unforgiving terrain, her tracks continued for days. The search party followed her trail for 5 more grueling days before they were forced to abandon their search, unable to locate her or make any sense of her disappearance. Months later, a hunter known only as Charlie came forward to the police with a disturbing account. While near the Third Canyon, he claimed to have been awakened one night by the sound of rocks falling. Looking towards the cliffs, illuminated by moonlight, he saw a naked figure, moving on all fours, scaling the sheer rock face with unnatural agility. Charlie describes the figure as a girl with a wild, frozen grin and wide, unblinking eyes. The sight is so unsettling that he initially dismisses it as a dream, but upon hearing Anne's disappearance, he reports the incident to authorities. Anne Lafferty was never found, and the police dismissed Charlie's story. Anne was presumed dead, as no one could survive the terrain naked, and therefore her disappearance was never actually investigated. Yukon Fisher, a part-time prospector and outlaw, met a grim fate in the Nahanni Valley that mirrored the chiming deaths of the others before him. Fisher had fled to the valley in 1927, seeking refuge from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who were pursuing him for crimes committed in the Yukon. Fisher's remains were discovered near the same area that had claimed the McLeod brothers. His body was found decapitated, and his campsite had been burnt to the ground, eerily consistent with the circumstances surrounding the other mysterious deaths in the valley. In 1929, Angus Hall, alongside 2 fellow prospectors, M.J. McGilroy and Andy Hay, set out for the valley, also in search of gold. Their group embarked on their journey with high hopes, navigating the South Nahanni Valley's treacherous water by boat. However, their expedition faced challenges from the beginning, such as flash floods and mechanical failures. By the time they reached Sow Creek, the area of Bennett Creek, their motor had failed, forcing them to continue on foot. After setting up camp, tensions began to rise among all 3 men. It is said that Hall, known for his fiery temperament, had a heated argument with his companions. Frustrated, he stormed off into the surrounding forest alone, carrying little with him. Gilroy and Hay, accustomed to Hall's short temper, assumed he was simply blowing off steam and would return after cooling down. They even reportedly caught a glimpse of him climbing further into the nearby valley later that evening, which reassured them at the time. When night fell and Hall had not returned, Gilroy and Hay began to grow uneasy. By morning, their concerns deepened, as there were no signs of him. The pair ventured further up Bennett Creek, retracing his likely path. Their search yielded nothing but a solitary footprint in the mud. A hobnail boot print, matching the type worn by Hall. Beyond this singular clue, there were no further traces of their companion. Desperate for help, McGilroy and Hay joined forces with another group of 4 prospectors: Fred Haisler, Bill Hill, W. Cochran, and George Spangler, who all happened to be in the area. Together, the combined group conducts an exhaustive search of the surrounding wilderness, scouring the valley, forests, and creek beds for several days. Despite their efforts, Angus Hall seems to have vanished without a trace, and to this day, his body has never been found. Phil Powers, a seasoned prospector, met a tragic and mysterious end in the Nahanni Valley in 1931. Powers had established a cabin near the mouth of Irving Creek, a tributary of the South Nahanni River, where he lived and worked while he searched for gold. Known for his resourcefulness and experience in the wilderness, Powers was well equipped to handle the challenges of the valley. However, his death would become the most debated and unsettling incident in the region's history. Powers' charged remains were discovered after his cabin burnt to the ground. His body was found lying near the ruins, clutching a rifle in his hand. The position of his body suggested that he had been attempting to defend himself, or perhaps escape the flames. The RCMP investigated the scene and concluded that the fire had been caused by a faulty stovepipe, leading to an accidental blaze that consumed the cabin and claimed Powers' life. However, Powers' friends and fellow prospectors were quick to dismiss this explanation. They argued that Powers was meticulous about maintaining his equipment and would not have allowed the stovepipe to fall into despair. Furthermore, the circumstances surrounding his death, his body clutching a rifle, and the complete destruction of the cabin seemed too unusual to attribute to a simple accident. Some speculated that foul play was involved. In 1936, 2 men, Joe Mulholland and Billy Reappear, established a cabin deep within the valley near the South Nahanni River. They were well prepared for their expedition, bringing ample supplies and equipment to sustain their search for gold. For a time, it seemed their efforts were progress. For a time, it seemed as if their efforts were progressing without incident. However, their fate took a dark turn when their cabin was also discovered burnt to the ground. When the searchers arrived at the scene, there was no trace of Mulholland or Reappear. The complete destruction of the cabin left little evidence to explain what happened. There were no bodies found, which made it unclear if they had perished in the fire or met some other fate. Theories about what happened to them range from foul play to natural disasters, but no definitive answers have ever been found. While traveling through the valley in 1945, Walter J. Tully made a grisly discovery. Near Flat Lake, he and 2 other prospectors discovered the badly decomposed body of Ernest Savard, a 40-year-old French-Canadian known in the area as a trader. He was found inside his sleeping bag with his head missing. The police claimed that he must have starved. Being so hungry can cause one to feel tired, and therefore he must have crawled into his sleeping bag, where he died, and animals made off with his head. What is happening in the Headless Valley of the Great White North? Some turn to local legends of the Dene people of the Naha, a warlike indigenous tribe said to have vanished from the region. Their mysterious disappearance is often tied to the valley's violent lore, with some suggesting that their descendants, or vengeful spirits, remain hidden, fiercely protecting their ancestral land. Others point to the valley's isolation and harsh conditions. hypothesizing that rival prospectors, driven by greed, may have been responsible for the savage deaths to claim gold or silence potential competitors. But the natural world offers its own terrifying possibilities. The idea of Ice Age mastodons, or the mystical wahale, giant wolf-like cryptids described as bear dogs, stir the imagination. Could such creatures be hiding in the untouched depths of the valley? Explain the violent end met by so many? The hollow earth theory poses an even more outlandish explanation. The valley's mysteries stem from its connection to a hidden subterranean realm inhabited by beings or forces beyond our understanding. Despite the more supernatural conjectures, others suggest the answer lies in human behavior and the lawless pursuit of fortune in a desolate wilderness. Yet the sheer frequency and eerie similarities of deaths, particularly the decapitations, continue to perplex even the most skeptical observers. Frank Henderson's experience in the valley offers an interesting insight to the secret ongoings of the valley. He ventured into the valley in the autumn of 1947, along with his longtime partner, John Patterson, accompanied by a group of local Indigenous men. Having worked together many times before, the men would leave each other messages carved into the sides of trees at designated spots, indicating where to meet. The two men had planned to meet up that spring. Henderson was the first to arrive and marked the tree. Patterson was no-show. So they set up camp and things began to take an eerie turn that first night. Henderson woke to the sound of distant wailing cries echoing through the stillness. His guides were already awake, visibly shaking and dousing their campfires in silence. When Henderson inquired about their behavior, they urged him to remain quiet and warned him that there were white giants near the valley, beings they spoke of with fear and reverence, and whose presence they believed was an ill omen. This caused concern among the group, and the Indigenous guides opted to leave the valley. Henderson still clung to hope that his partner Patterson might show up, with hesitation, and hesitated to abandon the search. However, the guides were firm in their decision and refused to re-enter the valley. As days turned into weeks, Patterson remained missing, and Henderson's concern grew. By August, there was no sign of his partner, and Henderson spent the summer scouring the valley, retracing their route, searching tirelessly for any trace of Patterson. Despite his efforts, Patterson's body was never found, and no clues emerged to shed light on his fate. Since 1908, the Nahanni Valley has been the site of over 44 recorded deaths and disappearances, earning it the ominous moniker, the Valley of the Headless Men. Even in more recent years, the valley's reputation for danger and mystery persists. In 2005, two men, Frederick Hardesty and David Horsey, vanished after visiting a cabin near the North Nahanni River. Hardesty's body was found near the river, while Horsey's was discovered in a thick brush several kilometers away. Official reports attribute their deaths to drowning and hypothermia, respectively, but their families raised questions about the investigation, citing strange evidence at the scene, including bullet holes in their cabin and other unexplained details. These modern cases, along with the historical ones, continue to fuel speculations about what might be behind the valley's dark history. Whether the cause lies in human greed, natural dangers, or something more mysterious, the Nahanni Valley remains a place of intrigue, unease, and its secrets still hidden within the rugged and remote wilderness.
That was an eerie journey down the crooked path with Amanda. How cool was that? If you loved it, don't forget to follow Down the Crooked Path on Instagram and TikTok. Amanda shares some really fun interactive content over there, and trust me, it gets even creepier. Down the Crooked Path is our sister podcast, and you can catch new episodes every Thursday wherever you get your podcasts. So if you're into the paranormal, folklore, and strange little corners of the world, we've got you covered. Thank you to Kyle McDonald for editing and composing our theme song.